Welcome to AFI Fest 2020, presented by Audi. I'm Eric Moore, a member of the programming team here at the festival. First, I want to thank all of our festival supporters, our presenting sponsor, Audi, our AFI members, and of course, you, our audience. We are here today with the filmmakers of our Shorts 3 program. These films have been selected out of almost 3,000 films, and they're the cream of the crop, and we're so excited to be able to share them with you. From In France, Michelle is a Man's Name, we've got M. Weinstein. From Lonely Blue Night, we have Cheng. From Breaking Ground, we have Inès Girihiwe. Sorry. From Child of Land, we've got Kimi, Howl. And from Tiger and Ox, we've got Seungee, Kim. From Little Chief, we've got Erica Tremblay. And from Black Goat, we've got Tang. So yay, welcome everybody. Your films are all uniquely, strikingly beautiful. That's one of the things that drew me to all of them and the team. What made you choose to tell the stories of your film, and how did you guide the look and feel of it to match the tone so well?
So my film, we shot in rural Oregon, which is a place I grew up going my whole life. My parents got divorced when I was really little, and my mom lives in New York, and my dad lives on a wheat farm in the middle of Oregon. And so I wanted to tell a story set in this place that sort of has inspired me and confounded me since I was a little kid. And I was drawn to American Westerns, which were often shot out in similar locations. But the setting itself was such a big part of the story, and something I really wanted to showcase as we were telling this complex narrative about a father and son and American masculinity more generally.
My film was set in a restaurant that's, not too far from LA. It's the restaurant that I kind of grew up eating at. Like growing up in the US, Chinese restaurants were one of the few places where I kind of learned like the traditions and like the rituals of like being Chinese. That was like one of the only places where I could sit around a dinner table and like kind of hear like my language or my parents' language in a sense. And, for me, a lot of like this idea of like being Chinese American, there's a lot of like performance in it. Like, you're a different person with your family and with like other people like outside of your family or your circle or your community. And the way that we decided to shoot it was, in a lot of wides, in a lot of like very theatrical kind of long takes, just to kind of show this idea of people performing, around like a dinner table.
My film was shot in my country, in Rwanda and in Kigali, and it's when you live in a society, you see some things. You see some things, and sometimes you want to talk about them. You want to show them. So it's about how some families in our society live in that way. So I wanted to do something similar to show how some things in our society are done, the way some people live, and maybe add up some drama. And it's family drama. So it's basically that, something I wanted to show, something I wanted to highlight.
My film is Kama Aina, which means child of the land in Hawaiian, and it takes place in one of the largest organized homeless encampment in Oahu. And I guess for me, I have a lot of family that's from Hawaii. My older sister spent a significant amount of time there. And just through visiting, I really got this sort of clandestine glimpse of this other side of an island that I think people don't generally see when you're a tourist and you're sort of confined to your resort. And, there's a lot of unseen, hidden poverty in paradise. And I became very obsessed with this one woman, Twinkle Borge, who has essentially created this entirely self-sustaining homeless encampment and has taken in over 40, I think it is, LGBTQ runaway youth, and just thought she had such an inspiring story. So wanted to make a narrative docu-hybrid about her.
Hi, I'm Seungee, the director of Tiger and Ox, and I'm joining from Seoul, South Korea. Then my film is about my mom and me. Technically, it's about single mother and her daughter. And personally, this film is for my personal closure in my lifetime line. And what can I say? It has so many mixture of feelings like experienced in my films are like hard to shorten the like intention of the film. I'm sorry. One thing I really want to do through my film was like to talk about the life of single mother and their kids, especially in Korean patriarchy society, because patriarchy, it's about actually power, like between man and woman, and also man to man and the man versus woman, like the social relation. When I was little, that time, like all the experience that I'm facing and my mother facing is, I thought it's personal issue. But when I become the age when my mother gave birth to me, I kind of realized it's not about personal issue. It's actually about like social problems. So I wanted to talk about this, especially in Korean society. That's why I made this film.
I'm Erica Tremblay. My film is Little Chief. I'm zooming in from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee on Girihiwe Lake in Ithaca, New York. My intention behind making the film Little Chief was I really wanted to go back to my reservation in Oklahoma where I grew up and create a film. My mother's been an educator in our community for 30 years, and over the years, just visiting her at the small school that she teaches at and teaches our youth from the Seneca Cayuga Nation, I just kind of saw all of the like heroism of what she did day in and day out to provide knowledge and to provide safety for her students, in addition to raising, you know, her two daughters. And that was really the birth of the film Little Chief. I wanted to kind of write a love letter to her and to the other matriarchal educators in our community, and kind of have a discussion around the disparities, you know, in the educational system for small rural indigenous schools. And so that was Little Chief.
Hi, I am joining from Fuzhou, China right now. Black Goat is a story about a young girl's first menstrual experience. I am a person around my circle that it's known to be obsessed about my own menstruation. I talk about it all the time. Before I became a filmmaker, I was a singer-songwriter. I was working in Hong Kong, and I even wrote a song about my period. And I just feel that this is not talked about enough on big screen. This is never talked about enough. And I shot Black Goat in Nepal. It was a magical experience. That summer, I was shooting a documentary in Nepal. I have been learning about monasteries and Buddhism for a very long time. And I was doing research in different places, and then I found this nunnery. I was just helping my friend with her project there, doing sound. And I found out that those girls are obsessed with filmmaking and they have never been into one. And they asked me, oh, if you want to make a film with us, a real one. Then I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Can we make a film about menstruation? And they were surprisingly supportive. This is just how that happened, very organically, yeah. But also, then I went back to New York. I told my professors about this film that I'm making. They just told me, okay, you have to be very careful about cultural appropriation because you're not from Nepal. And then I just keep that in my head. When I was actually writing and shooting the story, I kept that story just from a more personal perspective. It's more about that I am asking a young nun to perform my own story. And they also told me a lot about weird superstitious thing about menstruation in Nepal, which we have a lot of that in China as well. So we found some common ground there when I was making that film. And also one of the reasons that touched me a lot while I was making that film there is I have always been curious about their world, what it feels like to be a girl in the nunnery. I was in one nunnery 10 years ago in Nepal, and all the girls, and there were some monks there too, like they were all so far away from me until I caught them taking selfies and listening to Justin Bieber. That's when I found out that, okay, so we are very different, we live very differently, but there's always something in common that we have. I always want to capture that. So I have been really grateful that I had the chance to make this short, and I am actually writing a feature about this world as well, and I hope that I can make it soon too.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Justin Bieber, he, you know, is a bridge to the world, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So all of your films are very powerful. They're very specific in the worlds that they're creating. And I'm just curious, how did you do that? What was the hardest part of making your films? And, you know, kind of, were you surprised by any of the things that came out of it?
It's a good question, because I think, you know, making a short is so hard no matter what, because there's never money and there's never time. So I think apart from that, I really wanted to work with non-actors on this project, and I wrote the movie for my best friend Ari, who plays the lead. And even though he was incredible in it, I think convincing him to be in it was the hardest part, even though I wrote the script for him. Just because he'd never been on screen before and he'd never been an actor before. And I think it's so important to know who you're writing a script for, and to work with someone who reflects the story you're trying to tell. And we had this incredible partnership where he gave me notes and we went back and forth, and we finally created a film that he wanted to be in. And I am so grateful to have had him in the movie, because he sort of tells the whole story in very, very few words. So I think that was the hardest part, if I'm not counting, you know, raising money and working in terrible weather with way too few shoot days.
This was interesting because this was actually, you know, it was one of the smoothest, easiest experiences I had making film. And, you know, it's such a luxury to be able to make a film at home, or, you know, kind of where you grew up. You have like unlimited resources, and even just shooting in like a restaurant that I went to growing up, like, you know, I had these places in my head, like even as a kid, like compositions like already kind of ready, and just like a comfort, like a level of comfort that I kind of want to carry into making anything else. Prior to this, I've mostly worked with non-actors, and, you know, getting to work with professional actors for the first time, it's surprising like how little I had to do. You know, our protagonist, I had seen her in The Farewell. She played the mom in that film, and, you know, I really loved what she did in that film. And just looking at her past work, I thought there was a lot that, you know, I could get from her for this character. And you know, on set, like I barely had to say anything to her. You know, she had basically understood this character of the mom from my film very deeply, and you know, I just kind of pointed her where to go, and she did her thing, and I was like, wow, like this is awesome. I barely have to say anything. Yeah, and just working with family and friends. Like my family came to set because they were like 20 minutes away, and just like kind of hung out. It's a very comfortable feeling, and yeah, something I hope to do in the future too.
Well, first of all, we also had a problem of time and funding and all those kind of stuff, but we managed to do it because, firstly, the main character, she understood well the character. She understood well what she was going to play, so it became more easy. It made the process easy, and to pull out really what we really wanted. And well, it was also kind of hard to work with the non-actors. the supporting character. He was not used to acting, so it was a bit hard working with him, but it was also another experience. But he portrayed well what he was supposed to show, and mostly that, and that we had a very collaborative team, and they all understood what we really wanted to get out of all the script and everything. So it was a hard job to do and to finish and all that, but it was also easy because we kind of understood each other and wanted to give our best to what we were doing.
My film also, you know, used a bunch of first-time actors that were houseless, and I think that that was, you know, that presented a challenge that was just sort of logistical, more so in nature too, and emotional, you know. And I think that I really wanted to walk this delicate balance of never cannibalizing anybody's story or fetishizing poverty or cultural appropriating, while also using people who had really lived and gone through this. And I think that finding someone, the lead actress, Malia, finding someone who had a life story that was very similar but wasn't exactly the same and wasn't still embedded within the trauma was actually just the most crucial part and the most difficult part, because I found that, you know, people that had lived this exact story would either clam up, or it was too raw, or, you know, there wasn't enough distance to really address it and to fully inhabit that role. So I think, you know, establishing trust and working through some of the trauma that the film did bring up, I think for people was a difficulty, but it was also a labor of love. And speaking of periods, my parents were like crafty, art department, like my entire family helped, and they both made the period blood that you see in the film, and that was just like a very precious moment.
Oh, that's great.
Making it.
That's awesome. Seungee.
I think my case is kind of different from other filmmakers because my film is animated documentary, so I don't have to like deal with other people. I don't have to like interact with other staff. I only have to work with myself, and I have to struggle like me in the past and my mom in the past, and also past experience and the memories. That was the hardship. So I used to have the depression and panic disorder, and then it got worse while making this film. So that time I had to had the session with therapists. That really helps, and also taking medication as well. Without those, I don't think I could have made that film.
I think kind of along the similar lines of what Kimi was saying about her film, you know, the topics in my film, you know, we were discussing, and there was a lot of, I guess, interacting with trauma inside of the physical place that I grew up in, and that all of the people who are in the film are also from. So I think that there was just a lot of, before shooting the film, really figuring out how we were going to strike that delicate balance to make sure that we weren't re-traumatizing anyone who was in the film or who was, you know, going to be on set every day. And I think another thing that we really tried to do is, you know, while we tried to have as many Indigenous cast, or sorry, everyone in the film was Indigenous, but had as many Indigenous crew members, there were people that were kind of coming into a community that they hadn't been a part of. So we wanted to make sure that there was some cultural education that happened prior to shooting. All of the children who are in the classroom are actually members of the Seneca Cayuga Nation. And so on one hand, you know, it's great to kind of bring in the cameras and the lights and all of these people so that they can see a film set. We also wanted to just make sure that everyone who was a visitor on that land knew that they were there visiting, and that there was a certain amount of respect that was being given to all of the people who were participating from the community. And that really was amazing to be able to kind of have all of these kind of pieces working with each other. And, you know, the kids were so amazing and so generous with their spirit and their energy. And, you know, I made the big mistake of when we were shooting the classroom scenes on that day wearing overalls, because you can like stick things in the pockets and they're very like good to have on set. But they teased me relentlessly the whole day, like no mercy. They're like, who's this lady with the overalls and why does she think she can tell us what to do? but it was just such a great experience to then be able to take the film back and have like a red carpet event for all of them to get to share in, you know, the making of the film. And I think one of the best moments was when a young boy in the classroom scene came up to me and he's like, "What's your job?" And I was like, "Well, I'm the director of the film." And he was like, "Can boys do that too? Like, can guys have that job?" And I was just like, this is the pinnacle of my life right here. And yes, boys can do that job too. So it was just a great experience overall.
So for Black Gold, producing is the hardest part. And getting the right location was hard because it's a very conservative society, and a lot of people would think that nuns should not be acting, should not be filmed, should not be known about. I had to go through a lot of men to find the right location about all these girls. And then I was allowed to shoot under one condition. The founder of the nunnery told me that she would like to see a whole female crew. But there is no female AC or gaffer in Nepal. Like, you never heard of that. So what I did was I flew my AC and DP and gaffer from my school, from NYU. And I flew 2 sound women from India. That's how we formed the team together. Yeah, and working with non-actors is surprisingly not difficult for me, because the nuns were just being themselves. They're just doing whatever they do every day, and they are just acting geniuses. I really don't have to ask much. They're there, and it was good enough. And in terms of my own creative process, I just told myself, do not turn this into another poverty porn. We have enough of that. I am from China. I have seen enough of films like that, and I never really felt comfortable about being represented like that. So I'm extremely aware of this, and I try my best to turn this into a comedy, because I want to make sure that all the girls, when they see this film, they don't feel bad. They would feel happy and satisfied. Yeah, that's the thing. Those are the things that I pay extra attention to. Yeah.
So all of your films have this like palpable intimacy to them. You know, you really kind of feel for the people that you're watching, and you feel like, you know, the filmmaker, you all had such a kind of personal connection to the stories. And I'm curious, what did you guys learn about yourselves while making the film?
I mean, I guess it's not something so deep, but you know, the film centers around karaoke and like a karaoke song. You know, for me growing up, I always really hated karaoke, but like my family friends, and like our relatives loved it. And so I would always have to sit like in these rooms and just listen to people sing karaoke for a really long time. And like, I would just never understood the appeal of it. But you know, like I started to make this connection, like whenever I was in China with like, you know, relatives or something, they'd be singing like American songs, like American pop songs or something. And then when I was in the US, like they'd be singing like Chinese songs, or like, you know, like Teresa Tang or something like that. And I was always like, why is there like, you know, I would never like get like an American song here, like with like a family or like gathering or something like that. And you know, like for me, like I started to see like there's this connection, there's like this longing for like life back at home that like, you know, our family friends express when they're singing these songs. It's like, you know, people just singing the songs of their home. And then in, you know, back in China, like people would be singing like these American songs. There's like this aspiration to like go west and to come here and to live that kind of life. And you know, for me, like after having to like practice singing a lot as like the block for like my characters and stuff, I started to really find that, oh, maybe karaoke is something I do like. And yeah. It's not an important thing at all, but you know, it's like realizing that Girihiwe was like a bridge for these two cultures. Yeah.
That's great. That's like such a kind of unexpected thing to kind of discover.
Yeah.
Let's go to Inès.
I wanted to make something which because it's about family members, mostly between husband and wife. So I wanted like to portray something which is not going to be about domestic violence. I wanted it to be about something else, something which shows like struggles some people go through, but without dramatizing it so that it would come out like domestic violence or some kind of that stuff. So and walking the bridge, I mean, walking the bridge, and I mean like going between those subjects without like making it like look like domestic violence or something like that. I had like to quieten anger, because when I was writing the movie, I felt mostly anger because it's something I see around family members, around the society, and it sometimes triggers anger. So I was like, how am I going to balance this so that this film will come out as something I want, something different from domestic violence, but more like change, more like something else. So it was really hard to, I realized that I really had that anger buried in me. So like, I had to control it. So I learned that, and I was like, oh, okay, was I really that angry about this subject? And it took me time like to make a somewhat like to come up with something I wanted. So it was a revelation to me, and it was something new I learned too. I learned that I didn't know throughout the process. So it was like, yeah, that was something I learned about myself through the process.
I think, you know, a motto that we sort of used throughout making the film is like, anything done in love. You know, I had basically the last minute decided to use the money that I was going to spend on my wedding to just make this film. And my fiance was very supportive and helped me produce it and got all my family and closest friends. And, you know, there was constant shit to navigate, and it was tumultuous. And there were things where I just felt like, am I doing something that's wrong? Am I handling this in the wrong way? And I think just really trying to realize that a lot of the barriers that you think exist in the world are sort of self-imposed. Like, I felt like I could only ever write about this woman Twinkle from afar, because I'm also a TV writer, so I was incorporating her into another project and just sort of, you know, writing about her character, her as a character, but then just really realizing that like you can actually approach someone who's on an island, who's far away, who's living in this encampment, and start this dialogue, and now this like great relationship that we have years later, you know, through just traversing this invisible barrier. Then you tell yourself like you can, and I guess you can. So everything done in love, I think, was sort of the motto and the biggest takeaway in the film.
The very first thing is I'm not gonna approach like the core of like deep in my mind, never again. And then the second thing is like it kind of changed my work ethic. I love to make animation in traditional way, like hand drawing on papers, like the actual papers. That time, while I'm making the film, that time I was in Paris, France for an artist residency. And after I finishing the drawing on the paper, and then I counted the papers, and it was more than 1,000, and I have to carry them back to Korea. And all of a sudden I realized maybe I'm the criminal for the the climate crisis, because I feel like I'm cutting all the trees in the world. So after this film, I'm not gonna make animation on paper, never again. I'm gonna make animation only in computer. That's also what I learned.
That's great. Well, you heard it here, everyone. She's made a pact. Awesome. Erica.
This is such a tough question. I think that, so this was my first narrative film that I wrote and that I directed. And for a lot of years, I was doing doc work, which I have such great respect for, and also doing a lot of digital work for like publishing companies. And I've always wanted to do narrative, but no one seemed interested in the stories that I wanted to tell. Like no one wanted to give me any resources to tell stories on a reservation in Oklahoma. It just wasn't interesting to people. And I just kind of like one day just decided, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to write a short film and I'm just going to push for this. And, you know, having made the film and, you know, getting into Sundance and then AFI, this festival is on my top of my list as well. And it's like looking at the success that it's had, I'm like, wow, like I started out with a goal to do something and now I've met these like benchmarks. And not that we need, you know, institutions to tell us that our stories are worthy, but I think that, you know, getting over my own imposter syndrome has been like a 15-year journey. And not that I'm there completely, but I feel like I have found my voice in a way, and at least I recognize that I have a voice and that I can use it, and I don't have to wait for someone to tell me that I have a story to tell, because I do. And it's funny to say it like that because, you know, looking back, I'm like, why didn't I just make a short film 15 years ago? But you really have all these blocks that are in front of you and all of these systems that are telling you no. And so I feel like now that I've made that breakthrough, I'm just really excited to keep moving forward with narrative filmmaking, and to get to have, you know, the film shared with an audience like this is just such a great privilege. And yeah, I hope to kind of keep that confidence in myself, because it's not always easy, but yeah, it's just great to be here amongst all of you inspiring people as well, because the more that we share these stories with each other, I think the more motivation that I get to keep pushing forward.
That's great. Yeah, I hope all of you know, you know, again, we selected your films out of over almost 3,000 films. So we definitely love your film. None of you are imposters. You're all the cream of the crop. So, and then let's go to, who's next? Yi.
Hi, this is also my first narrative short. And I go to a very competitive school, then I constantly think that I am not good enough. And that's why I shot this film end of 2017, early 2018, but it took me like a year something to figure out the editing, and I kept that film like a secret that I didn't want to show it to people. And I got obsessed with this one frame. Like, should I extend this to maybe two more frames? Because I was editing by myself. And I think I went crazy. And it was very unnecessary. Now that I found out, because it's been so long, my friends were telling me, okay, E, this is enough. This film is okay. You should just send it out and wait. And
yeah, that's always hard knowing when a project is done, right? Because it's
yeah,
never, you can always do something else.
Yeah, I didn't know when this project was done until, but I listened to my friend and I started submitting. And it was around this time last year, I got a call from Austin Film Festival. Then I got in. Then I was like, okay, so the film is done, right? Great. And I was really glad. I was in China at that time preparing for my thesis. And I flew back to US for this because this is my world premiere. That was my world premiere. And then I saw the audiences liking my film and I won an award for it. And yeah, in the room with Game of Thrones writers, you know, I got the best student film. They got the real award, but I was feeling that, oh, this is cool. And sometimes I need some validation, but after that, I'm like, okay, screw it. I'm gonna make another film. And then pandemic happened. then we were not able to do anything. I was in China when pandemic happened. I was not able to shoot, and then the travel ban happened. So I flew back to US through Taiwan, through a 14 days of quarantine in Taiwan and back to US. And then pandemic hit New York.
Yeah.
Then I was stuck in New York for 6 months. It was really depressing. But it was fun because I was working on my thesis script. I got a chance to look at it again, and I wrote another short, and both of my short got funding. All of us know what funding means to us right now. It's just very, very important. And it also means that I don't have to ask money from my parents to make another short. So I was really glad. And now I'm back, about to make another film. And I tell myself this time, don't get too serious. Don't get too obsessed with this 1 or 2 frames. This is just a short film. You're gonna make a lot more other films. You're gonna make features, and you're still gonna make a lot of mistakes.
Totally.
But that's how you learn. And you have a lifetime to learn this. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Em.
Yeah, in terms of what I learned about myself, I shot this film in rural Oregon, as I mentioned, where my dad is from, and ended up going out there and spending a lot of time with my dad, which was really cool. We have a good relationship, but naturally, like we haven't lived in the same place since I was 5 years old. And so this was the most time I spent with my dad in a really, really long time. And it was really interesting because the film is about a trans kid and his dad. And I felt like in a lot of ways, I didn't live the story in a way. It was a much happier ending in a lot of ways. But I really got to take my dad to every location. I borrowed his truck. We ended up, in the middle of nowhere, knocking on doors, trying to find places to shoot. And I feel like I sort of lived the story of the film with a different ending, but with my dad, which was really kind of a life-changing experience.
That's great. Well, thank you all so much. I have so many more questions for you. We just don't have the time for it. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. Tell your friends, our audience, please tell your friends that you can watch these films until the end of the festival. So make sure to send them there this way. We'd love, love, love to hear from you on social media at or hashtag AFIFest. And of course, join us for more great films and virtual events at fest.afi.com. So thank you all for joining us.